Death and the Maiden. Written by Pit Viper of Doom. Read for you by Gemini Wishes. Summary. After a brief delay due to security overhauls and the societal upheaval from All Might's retirement, the much-anticipated I-Expo is finally underway. Melissa Shield, budding support engineer on I-Island's famous campus, sends an invitation to her honorary uncle All Might, eager to see him again hopefully lift her father's spirits. He arrives with one of his favorite students in tow. He's odd, for reasons that Melissa can't quite put her finger on. Chapter 1. Ars Moriendi. Izuku startles awake, dreams slipping from his grasp until his memory of them is blissfully blank. His heart pounds uncomfortably against his ribs. The rumble of the plane has long set into his bones, and every time he teeters on the threshold of sleep, he finds himself suddenly and terrifyingly aware of where he is. Namely, sitting in a pressurized tin can hurtling through the air more than 10 kilometers above the sea. It helps to have Ray's hand in his hair, petting until his pulse stops racing, but it still takes a moment or so to shake off the feeling. "You alright, kiddo?" Nana asks, only a beat ahead of All Might. Their voices overlap, bringing him further into the present. "Yeah, I'm good," he says automatically. "I'm fine, just not a fan of planes, I guess." All Might looks terribly remorseful.
"I'm sorry, my boy. I didn't realize."
"That's okay. I didn't either," Izuku says with a sheepish smile. "It's my first time, and they're a lot smaller on the inside." All Might hums quietly.
"Well, you'll be happy to know that we'll be landing soon. We're nearly to I-Island now."
Izuku breathes deeply and lets it out, relieved. He wants out. The plane isn't small enough to make him panic, but it's enough to make him nervous and uncomfortable. He wants to feel the ground under his feet. He wants to feel fresh, non-recycled air. He wants to hold his cat, and wishes not for the first time that he'd brought her with him. But he can't do any of that right now, so instead he shuts his eyes, holds Ray's hand, and tries to ignore the feeling of his stomach crawling up his throat every time the plane dips. Eventually, the plane touches down and comes to a halt, and Izuku can finally let himself fully relax. He exits the plane on All Might's heels, decked out in his familiar hero gear. Ray skips along, watching their surroundings in awe. It's not every day you get to walk around on a man-made island, even if you're a ghost. That said, it's not too different from being on a regular island. It's vast enough that any rocking from the ocean is utterly imperceptible. As they leave the airstrip behind, more of the island becomes visible. Izuku stops in his tracks. His breath shudders a bit as it passes in and out. To anyone who doesn't know him, it's probably too little to notice, but All Might knows him well. A careful hand on his shoulder steadies him.
"Are you all right?"
Ray presses close to his side and grips his hand, swinging it a little. It keeps him grounded, enough for him to remember to look down at his feet and away from...
"Midoriya, are you feeling well, my boy?"
"It's funny," he says. "You never think about it much. I never think about it. You'd think I would, but..." All Might's hand tightens on his shoulder. A ghost brushes against his other shoulder, then another, and another. More and more, until Izuku loses count. He takes in a breath, lets it out. "Sorry about that," he says. "I'm still feeling funny from the flight." "We're in the ocean," he doesn't say. "A lot of people die on the ocean." I-Island stretches before them. With preparations more or less complete, the place looks like a cross between a university campus and a theme park. Only Izuku can see that it's about as crowded as one. The smell of seawater is thick enough to choke him. The man who brushes past him drips with each step. Izuku has never seen a uniform like that outside of grainy sepia photographs from centuries past. He walks forward and tries not to meander too much. Ray growls deep in the back of her throat, and the nearest ghosts give them a wide berth. "I'm glad they could hold the I-Expo this year after all," he says. His stomach is still turning flips, but it's sure to settle soon once he adjusts to the crowds. "I wasn't sure they would after everything."
"Bad luck and timing all around,"
All Might says.
"Originally, it was scheduled at the very start of summer, so we would have attended before your class left for the training camp."
Izuku hums softly and nods. He remembers hearing about that, but a lot was going on at the time, from the final exams to his encounter with Shigaraki at the mall.
"Some minor security breach or other,"
All Might goes on.
The Expo was delayed while they overhauled their security system. Then Camino happened, and...
Yeah. The less said about that, the better. He's here on a well-earned break, so he can spend an extended weekend thinking about something that isn't Camino, training, or the upcoming provisional license exams.
Well, in any case, it's here now, and so are we,
All Might continues brusquely, mood brightening as if to shrug off the thread of heavy thoughts. Though, to be fair, it does seem genuine, especially if Nana and Ray's smiles are anything to go by.
We'll just have to make one quick stop before you go off and explore. I have some old friends to catch up with, and thank for the invitation.
His mood brightens enough for it to be obvious. What he's trying to say, Nana chimes in, is that we're visiting his old college boyfriend. Izuku almost chokes on the air he's breathing.
We're visiting his what?
All Might looks up, eyes flickering back and forth as he struggles to focus on one point of empty air.
Sensei, what are you telling him?
Nana cackles.
I didn't know you had a college boyfriend,
Izuku says, and his mentor's flustered spluttering settles his nerves.
Come to think of it, I had to dig pretty deep just to find information on your run in the U.S. Dare I ask how old you were when you did this digging?
All Might says in a long-suffering voice.
A dead graduate student lives in our apartment. I've been getting research tips since elementary school.
Izuku thinks hard for a moment.
You had a partner back then, right? Was it him?
They were, dare I say, schmoopy, Nana says helpfully. Ray giggles fit to burst.
He's now a leading engineer and researcher here on I-Island,
All Might says quickly, trying to regain control of a discussion he only has half access to.
We went our separate ways, and he had a family of his own, but we're still very good friends. Must be, if he invited you to I-Expo,
Izuku says absently. By now they're in the thick of things, surrounded by Expo staff and those who, like All Might, have invitations to the Expo's opening night.
Actually,
All Might gives a slight smile.
He wasn't the one who invited me.
Izuku doesn't quite register his words, distracted by the pro-hero Godzilla in the distance, surrounded by a small crowd of reporters and a large crowd of the dead.
Sorry, what?
I said. Before All Might can repeat himself, the press seems to materialize out of nowhere and descend upon them. Izuku barely dodges out of the thick of them in time, but All Might is not quite so lucky. It takes a little over 5 minutes for All Might to extricate himself. It might have taken longer, but Ray gets impatient and starts making her rounds through them. Once enough of them have pulled back or gotten distracted by the sudden air of unease and discomfort, All Might politely makes his excuses and retreats.
Sorry about that,
he says sheepishly when Izuku rejoins him.
I'd been hoping to attract less attention after... like this. Come along, she said she'd meet us by the campus.
Okay, Izuku says.
She who? You'll see.
All Might's arm comes to rest around his shoulders.
Oh, and before I forget, you might want to keep an eye out for the press yourself.
Why?
On the occasion that you're not with me,
All Might says.
As the retired symbol of peace, I can soak up any attention otherwise. But keep in mind, by now, you're something of a high-profile figure yourself, considering your involvement in Camino.
A lump forms in Izuku's throat. Oh.
Don't get me wrong, I'm tolerant of the media, and I know that free press is vital to a healthy society. But I've been dealing with them for years, and you're young and healing from something terrible. A reporter is many things. Sensitive isn't always one of them.
What do I do, then?
Be polite,
All Might replies.
On the bright side, the Expo is careful to allow access only to the most reputable news sources, especially on opening night, so they're not likely to twist your words to get a story.
If all else fails, Nana adds, the magic words are no comment.
No comment,
Izuku repeats to himself.
Also a good answer,
All Might says, and squeezes his shoulder.
Don't worry, though. I have an idea to make sure you won't be caught alone.
Chapter 2. Memento Mori. She sees them coming long before they see her. To be fair, she's been waiting out here for a while, sitting on the wide wall overlooking the lab building's front steps, with her knees drawn up to her chest and her chin pressed into her arm. Of the two figures approaching the building, she knows one but recognizes neither. She sees when the taller one spots her. His head comes up and his steps falter, and that's when she finally leaves her spot and comes down the steps to meet them. Truthfully, this isn't the first time she's seen him like this. She watched the Japanese news broadcast from home, clutching Papa the way she used to when she was little. as they watched him fighting and bleeding and struggling against an enemy more terrible than any they've ever seen him face. She gasped when he changed, when the steam cleared and he was left weakened and shrunken and so breakable. But Papa didn't. Papa only wept without a sound, and of course he knew. Of course he told Papa and not her.
"Hello, Melissa,"
he says, and his voice is soft and low in a way she's never heard before.
"It's been a while, hasn't it? You've grown."
He's smiling at her, and it should be unfamiliar on that face. It should be too gaunt and too tired and too nervous, but somehow it looks right. She moves forward but hesitates. For all that he still towers over her, part of her is afraid of breaking him. But it's all right, because he's never been shy about pulling her into hugs, and the fact that he can't lift her up and twirl her around anymore doesn't change that. He's so thin now. She's never been able to feel so many bones before, arms and ribs and pointy elbows and chin, but it's all right, because no matter what else happened, he's still here. "Hi, Uncle Mite." If her voice wobbles a bit, she trusts him not to comment on it. "We've missed you." It takes a while for either of them to let go, and she quickly dries her eyes on her arm as they pull back. "I'm glad you could come."
"Well, I've been quite at my leisure lately,"
he laughs, and it's warm and full in spite of his body. Not All Might's boisterous laughter, but something deep and rich, something that belongs not to All Might, but to the man that Papa still calls Toshi.
"How are things on the island? I hope I didn't worry you too much."
Melissa tries not to wince. Papa was a wreck after that terrible fight, and she was hardly better. "Of course we were worried," she says, almost chiding him. "The phone calls helped, though. Papa started sleeping again once we heard from you." Her uncle winces.
"I'm sorry,"
he says.
"It couldn't be avoided, though."
"I know." She meets his eyes. "Is it true, though? Is it over for you?"
"My retirement is official and final,"
he says. Her face must fall at that, because he clips her chin lightly.
"None of that now,"
he says gently.
"It wasn't such a bad way to go out, was it?"
Her vision goes wet and blurry until she blinks the tears away. "It was spectacular." He laughs again, stronger this time.
"Why, thank you. Does David know we're here?"
"No, I didn't tell him I invited you." Melissa wipes her eyes again and smiles. If her uncle can be cheerful about it, then so can she. "It's supposed to be a surprise, but he's probably up in his office now with Sam. He'll be thrilled to see you, I know it."
"I should hope so. I've missed him. But before that..."
He steps to the side.
"I'd like you to meet the guest that I brought along."
Melissa purses her lips to hide her embarrassment. Like a scatterbrain, she got so caught up in the reunion that she forgot her uncle wasn't alone. With her eyes clearer, she takes a good look at the boy he brought. He's probably a bit younger than she is, a little small for a teenage boy, but broad-shouldered and sturdily built. The first thing that catches her attention is, of course, his hero costume. A simple deep green jumpsuit. He doesn't seem to have much in the way of support gear, aside from reinforcing braces on his arms and legs. There's nothing wrong with it to her eyes, besides how basic it is. Perhaps if she knew more about his quirk and fighting style, she could make a few suggestions herself. By the time she's finished taking stock of his gear, she realizes that she's completely missed her uncle's introduction of him. "Sorry, could you repeat that?" Uncle Mite chuckles.
"I said this is my student, Midori Izuku. He's a first year at UA, one of the brightest in his class."
The name is familiar to her, as is his face, with that wild dark green hair and those green eyes. The dark circles beneath them are deeper than they were in the picture that the news broadcast showed, and the scarring around his left eye stands out even more. If he's a first-year student, then he's younger than her, but he looks almost as tired as her uncle does. Small wonder, considering what he's been through recently. Her uncle is talking again, and his Japanese falls effortlessly on her ears.
"Midoriya, I would like you to meet Melissa Shield, a very bright student of hero support engineering here on the I-Island campus. Her father and I go way back."
Melissa steps forward eagerly. "It's nice to meet you." She holds her hand out to shake, and Midori Izuku starts to bow, but they both seem to catch themselves at the same time. "Sorry, I didn't realize." No, it's quite all right." Embarrassed, Melissa bows back. "It's nice to meet one of Uncle Mite's students." She straightens up, and he hesitantly offers a handshake, which she accepts. "It's nice to meet you too," he says. His smile is a little strange, but friendly enough. All Might likes to be cagey about his past. Once in a while it works. Before she can ask what he means, he turns to smirk at his teacher. "Also, Uncle Mite?" He splutters again.
It's a nickname.
It's more than that, Melissa says. Really, he's been like family since I was little.
I guess he must have that effect on people, Midoriya Izuku tells her, straight-faced. He's sort of adopted my entire class.
Melissa stifles a giggle. Is that so?
Well, except Mineta, but we don't talk about Mineta. Also, he plays favorites. I have this friend who literally asked me if I was his secret illegitimate child.
Oh, maybe that makes us cousins.
All right, then.
Uncle Mike speaks up, right as Melissa starts laughing for real.
Shall we go visit your father? He'll be in his office, right?
Still laughing, Melissa allows herself to be hurried along, though Midoriya catches her eye with a shrewd look that promises story swapping later.
Melissa can't wait.
Uncle Mike engages her again as they head up to Papa's office, and his student falls back to silence. He's quiet enough that Melissa worries about leaving him out, but he politely bunts her invitations into the conversation, and seems happy enough to let them catch up on their own. After one last hallway, she leads them to Papa's office door and slips in her keycard. The door slides open, and she catches the tail end of his conversation with Sam.
Just expected better of you,
Papa's assistant is saying, gently chiding.
After last time, I would have thought you'd learn.
Papa looks tired. He always looks tired these days. He has ever since Uncle Mike retired. She only hopes this will cheer him up.
We'll discuss this later,
he says to Sam when he catches sight of her. Uncle Mike is still around the corner, so he hasn't seen him yet. Papa's face creases in a smile.
Hi, sweetheart. I thought you'd gone to the exhibits already.
Papa, don't tell me you forgot about my surprise, she says. He raises his eyebrows.
You've been so mysterious lately. Is it finally time?
Yep. She looks over her shoulder. Come on in. It's been half killing her to keep this from him this long, but the look of surprise and delight on Papa's face when Uncle Mike walks into his office makes it all worth it. It's not all joy, of course. Papa sees the same thing she did, remembers the same thing she did. Uncle Mike must notice it too, because he closes the distance in about 3 steps before drawing Papa into a hug. It's the right thing to do. Papa returns it, and his breath shakes on the way in as he holds tight and doesn't let go.
I didn't know you were coming,
he says, his voice muffled in Uncle Mike's shoulder.
I thought you'd still be recovering, or... I wanted to call ahead, Uncle Mike admits, but Melissa had her heart set on surprising you. Of course she did.
Papa pulls back, and his face is dry, but his eyes are shinier than usual.
God, Toshi, how long has it been? Too long.
Uncle Mike lets himself be tugged down so Papa can get a better look at him.
Emailing just isn't the same, but it's been quite a year for me.
Papa's face almost crumples.
I'm so sorry, Toshi. You've nothing to be sorry for,
he says.
It's just, after you contacted me, I had some ideas that might help you, but I never... Dave, it's fine. Is it?
Papa asks.
Are you joking?
Her uncle's smiles are a lot different from the ones he wears in her memories, but somehow they make her feel safe, just in a different way than they used to.
Hundreds saved, a great evil vanquished forever. It would have broken my heart to go out any other way.
For the first time in so many weeks, Papa looks just a little bit less sad.
Now, on to happier things, Uncle Mike declares. Dave, I'd like you to meet one of my favorite students. It's an honor to meet you,
Midoriya Izuku says. Melissa jumps, then chides herself for being silly. She'd seen Uncle Mike walking in, but hadn't even noticed his student follow him. She's been standing in full view of the door, and she didn't even see him standing right next to her until he spoke.
Young Midoriya, this is David Shield, one of the most decorated engineers on the island,
Uncle Mike says proudly.
And a hero in his own right.
The boy fidgets on his feet. His eyes have that glow that people usually have when they meet Papa.
I'm a huge fan of your work. I have so many questions. Well, I think I have time to answer a few, Papa says warmly. I have to admit, I've been curious to meet one of Toshi's students.
With one last look at his teacher, the boy launches into an absolute storm of excited chatter. Papa's surprised, but pleasantly so. Midoriya asks the kind of questions he likes the best, the kind that turn into deeper discussions. Uncle Mike pulls her aside with a hand on her shoulder. Sam has already left to help with Expo preparations, so there's no one else to overhear them while Papa and Midoriya talk.
I have a favor to ask,
he says in a hushed voice. I do owe you one, she whispers back. What do you need, Uncle Mike?
Well, it's about young Midoriya.
He purses his lips for a moment.
You recognized him, I take it?
Melissa's face falls. They showed his picture during the news broadcast, she says. Him and the other boy.
He's been through a great deal recently.
Uncle Mike goes on.
It's why I brought him along. Young Bakugo will also be here since he received his own invitation. But Midoriya has been working very hard to become stronger, and he deserves a break, so...
You want me to show him around? Melissa guesses.
More or less. You know this island and this expo far better than I do, and I'd like to run interference with the press. Make sure the cameras flock to me rather than the students.
Good plan, Melissa says. I'm in.
Thank you, he says. And if at all possible, I'd like this conversation not to reach him. It's not always possible, since he has a way of hearing about things he isn't present for. But hopefully certain parties will understand that he frets when people worry about him, and I'd like him to have a nice time without feeling guilty for inconveniencing people.
There's an odd tone in his voice, like those last few parts were aimed at someone besides her. Melissa gets the distinct feeling that she's missing something, but her task is clear, so she lets it slide and gives him a thumbs up. You can count on me, Uncle Mite.
That's my girl,
he says with a smile.
Oh, and keep an eye out, will you? If my sources are correct, a few of his classmates will be wandering around as well. It'll do him good to be surrounded by friends.
The warmth in his tone brings an impish grin to her face. Why, Uncle Mite, she says. Could it be that I've gained a cousin after all? His look of utter betrayal sends her into gales of laughter. So, Melissa says, once she and Midoriya are heading back to the expo. You can call me Melissa, but would you prefer I called you Midoriya or Izuku? After the handshake bow slip-up, she's not going to assume anything. She hopes it's the second one, though. She can speak and understand Japanese perfectly well, but she knows her accent is atrocious, and she doesn't trust herself not to trip over the syllables of her surname every other time she says it.
He mulls over it for a moment. Izuku's fine, I guess, and thanks for showing me around.
It's no trouble at all, she says, remembering what Uncle Mite had told her earlier. I've been to this expo every year since I was tiny. It's nice to be able to share it with someone new. That brings a smile out of him. I'm glad. Also, I have to know, she goes on. What's Uncle Mite like as an actual teacher? The smile widens, and Izuku shares a story about the first time her uncle walked into an actual classroom. That story prompts one from her about the time he met her grade school friends, and that lasts them until they reach the expo proper. The exhibits are almost all hands-on, some of them manned by researchers and engineers eagerly demonstrating their new tech. Almost immediately, Izuku is entranced. Aside from his animated conversation with Papa, he's been quiet and subdued so far, staring off into space or at empty walls. But once the shiny tech starts to come out, something in him lights up. At the exhibit for the omnidirectional surveillance headset, he launches into a detailed list of possible applications in hero work, which eggs her into whispering her own detailed list of improvements she'd make if it were her project. This carries on for several exhibits. Speaking of which, she says, once they finish analyzing Dr. Mizra's deep-sea diving suit, I was wondering about your hero costume too.
What about it?
May I? She asks, and he nods and lets her take his arm. The brace is easily detachable, and she inspects it with a critical eye. It doesn't take her long to approve. It's a creative design, and she can see the love that went into it. To reduce stress on your arms, right? I take it your quirk is strength-based?
Yeah, I have a history of breaking bones.
He shows her his hand, now uncovered. It's obvious that the fingers were broken and healed crookedly, and his hand is lined with scars. Melissa hisses with sympathy. I can see why you wanted a brace if your quirk is that hard on you, she says. I'm loving the craftsmanship on this, though. What company designed it?
It wasn't designed by a company, Izuku answers. One of my yearmates, actually. She's a first year in the support department, but she's always making things like this.
Could I get her email address? Melissa asks hopefully. That's probably really forward, but he's already pulling a small notepad and pen out of one of the pouches on his costume.
Honestly, she'll probably thank me. Hatsume loves networking more than sleep.
They trade the brace for the slip of paper. Izuku is just slipping it back on when a high voice echoing across the exhibition hall makes him stand a little straighter. Deku! Hey, Deku, over here! Melissa follows the voice, wondering who Deku is, and finds a trio of girls sprinting toward them. At least, one of them is sprinting. She reaches them first and almost cannons into Izuku, hugging him around the middle.
Raka! Izuku sounds winded. What? I thought you weren't coming until tomorrow.
The girl hops back, excited. Most of the class isn't, but some of us got lucky. I'm here thanks to Yamomo. The other two girls catch up at a more sedate pace. Izuku looks surprised but overjoyed to see them. Melissa remembers what Uncle Mike said about there being other students here, and smiles to herself. "Don't look so surprised," one of the other girls, and boy is her costume a bold statement, says. "The Expo guest list is always a who's who of pro-heroics, and you know my family's prominent in the industry. Ida's somewhere around here too." "I feel sort of bad," the third girl says, a little sheepishly. To Izuku she explains, "Momo-chan had 2 extra spots, so the girls all played Janken for them. The others really wanted to go, but..." Her throat swells for a moment, and a frog-like croak cuts off the rest of her words. "You want it fair and square, Suyu-chan," Muraka says. "And tomorrow the whole class will be here," Momo, yeah Momo, adds. "Jiro and Hagakure won't miss too much, so don't feel too bad." It's at this point that the girls catch sight of Melissa. Muraka's face is open and friendly. "Hi there! Were you at Deku just now?" Melissa hesitates. "That depends. Is Deku your name for Izuku, or—" "It's a nickname," Izuku confirms. "Guys, this is Melissa Shield. She and her dad are friends of All Might." "So you just met her and you're already on a first-name basis?" Muraka waggles her eyebrows outrageously at him, and Melissa chokes on a laugh. "Muraka, come on, she's American." "Just teasing. Sorry, Deku. It's nice to meet you, Melissa. Shield." Melissa's fine. She's introduced to them all one by one. Muraka Ochako, Yaoyorozu Momo, and Asui Suyu, all Izuku's classmates. "It's nice to meet all of you. All Might and my father go way back. He's been my honorary uncle since I was little, so when I heard he was teaching, I thought it was the coolest thing." "It's absolutely the coolest thing," Muraka agrees. "Actually, we were about to go get food when we spotted you. You should come with us and hang out. Deku, you'll never guess who's here." And just like that, Melissa is surrounded by other kids her age for the first time in too long. They're all about a year younger, but that's far closer than the people she's usually with. That's the only real downside to being a graduate-level university student who's young enough to be in high school. Her classmates are cool, and a lot of them respect her and acknowledge her as an equal, but that doesn't stop her from being the baby of the department. This is nice. Izuku is nice, and his friends are nice, and she is so glad she sent that invitation to her uncle. When they go out for food, they get another surprise. There's a boy there from the Ida family. And of course she knows the name, when Papa's done special orders for more than one hero in that family. And Ida Tensei's quirk and fighting style have been a case study in several of her course textbooks. 2 more of their classmates have even taken jobs as waitstaff. Neither of them look happy about it. "We haven't been able to do anything." The blonde is introduced to her as Kaminari Denki. "I've barely been able to sit down for the past 4 hours. The other is hanging off of Yaoyorozu's arm, wailing piteously. "Yo, Momo, help me. I thought this was a good idea, but I was so wrong. "It can't be that bad, can it?" Yaoyorozu says gently, tilting her head so the other girl's horns don't jab her in the face. "I thought it was a good idea, too. I've always thought waiting tables looked like a fun job. I've been wanting to try it myself, but I can never seem to fit something like that into my schedule." Melissa sees Uraraka and Suyu exchange glances. "Well, that's definitely an opinion," Uraraka says. "Momo-chan, you are a sweet summer child, ribbit," Suyu says gravely. Kaminari and Ashido are pleasant, for all that they're tired. They loiter a little too long after bringing drinks and snacks to their table, but Melissa isn't about to call them on it. Ida tries, but he's drowned out by friendly conversation and lighthearted bickering. Not for the first time, Melissa is glad for her lifetime of fluency in Japanese. Izuku has his own quiet, odd charisma, but Yaoyorozu and Suyu are pleasant, Uraraka and Kaminari and Ashido are boisterous, and Ida doesn't seem to realize how funny he is. It's so easy to get swept up in their paces. Their snacks and drinks have almost run out when a voice amplified by a sophisticated sound system rings out from the pit arena in the central plaza. Melissa perks up at it, and her new friends' heads turn towards the commotion. "Sounds like the demonstrations are in full swing," Melissa remarks. "Demonstrations?" Uraraka asks. "Every year they have events to let trainee heroes and rookies show off their skills," Melissa explains. "Mostly just timing how long it takes to bust up robots, that kind of thing. People can sign up at any time. You guys want to go see?" She's surrounded by trainee heroes, so the answer is an obvious yes. Kaminari and Ashido are heartbroken that they can't go with them. Melissa's heart goes out to them, and she resolves to slip the pair of them invitations to the reception dinner tonight. They look like they've been working hard. The arena isn't very big. It's situated at a lower level, and the surface is ringed with safety railing to keep onlookers from falling in. The pit is just large enough for an area of constructed terrain. Grassy fake hills, raised platforms, and a water feature, though the grass rarely lasts the whole expo. They're just approaching the railing overlooking the pit when the announcer's voice rings out.
Next up, from UA High School, Bakugo Katsuki.
Another boy at the railing lets out a whoop. "Fight on, Bakugo!" he bellows, pounding the railing as he cheers. "Show him what you're made of!"
"Hi, Kirishima,"
Suyu greets him. The boy turns to them with a friendly grin. "Hey guys, you're just in time. Bakugo's been swearing up and down he's gonna beat everybody else's time. And just plain swearing too, you know how he gets." Melissa turns to watch as the timer starts. She recognizes the name Bakugo, and sure enough, he's another boy Izuku's age. He's also absolutely demolishing every robot in the ring. His quirk is a powerful one, and the costume he's wearing is perfect for it. Those gauntlets are truly inspired. A scant 13 seconds is all it takes for him to reduce all the robots to scrap. And to top it off, instead of taking the stairs, he simply propels himself to the rim of the pit with his quirk and climbs over the railing. Almost immediately he spots the others and scowls.
"The hell are you slack-jawed idiots looking at?"
he snaps.
"Don't be so rude,"
Ida scolds him. Bakugo sneers at him.
"Unless you feel like beating my time, I don't give a shit."
"You did a great job, buddy," the cheerful redhead calls over.
"Yeah, I know."
He starts to storm away, and though Melissa gives him a generous berth, he slows as he passes by. He's not looking at her, though. In an instant, his eyes are on Izuku. Melissa can't read the look that passes between them. She doesn't know much about them, only that they were kidnapped by villains together. But that can mean anything. The moment shatters when Uraraka calls over. "Hey, Deku, look who's up next!" Izuku looks, then darts back to the railing so fast Melissa is half convinced he's about to leap over himself. Startled, Melissa follows his gaze and wonders just how many of his classmates are already here. This one is another boy in a standard hero jumpsuit, almost nondescript aside from his bright shock of red and white hair. Beside her, Izuku cups his hand around his mouth.
"Good luck, Todoroki!"
The boy raises his head, spots them, and waves as the announcer introduces him. The timer starts. 12 seconds later, the timer has stopped. The ring is filled with icebergs, and Izuku is off and running. "Me next! I'm going next!" he yells. Uraraka and Kirishima laugh, and Ida shouts at him to be careful running around the rim of the arena. Melissa bounces on the balls of her feet as she waits for the arena to be set up again, and for the announcer to make Izuku's introduction. She isn't sure exactly what his quirk is, other than it's volatile and strength-based. And all the excitement, it's just never come up. This is a good opportunity to see it for herself.
"Excuse me."
"Oh, sorry." Melissa moves over and lets Todoroki Shoto step up to the railing to watch. Up close, she can see a patchy scar on the left side of his face. "You're one of Izuku's friends, right?"
"Yes."
There's a slight furrow in his brow as he looks at her.
"Who are you?"
"That's Melissa," Uraraka answers from Todoroki's other side. "She and her dad know All Might, and she's been showing Izuku around the expo. She designed support tech." The confusion fades to a polite sort of indifference.
"Oh, that's cool."
The announcer calls out Izuku's name, and Todoroki turns back to the arena. Izuku takes off in a flash of green lightning, and Melissa's mouth drops open. She knew, at least conceptually, that Izuku must be good to catch Uncle Might's attention. But he's not just good. His quirk looks almost similar to All Might's, even if his fighting style is different, and it lets him move fast and kick hard. Moreover, he doesn't waste a moment searching for his targets. He attacks them directly and swiftly, as if he knows where they are even before he sees them. And even then, he's holding back, she says to herself. He's suppressing his own strength.
"He has to."
She jumps when Todoroki answers.
"If he went all out, he'd destroy the ring, the ground we're standing on, and whatever limb he used along with it."
"He's kind of stupid strong," Uraraka says. The buzzer sounds. Midoriya's time is also 13 seconds, just a fraction of a second behind Bakugo. "No wonder someone thought he and All Might were related," Melissa muses.
"It made sense," Todoroki says.
"Wait, that was you?" Todoroki is saved from having to answer when Izuku returns, winded and smiling.
"Thought I could beat your time,"
he says, barely sounding upset about it.
"Maybe next time." "The exercise gave the advantage to long-range quirks,"
Todoroki says with a shrug.
His calm poker face finally breaks into a smile. It wasn't really a matter of skill. That's quitter talk, Izuku scoffs. Todoroki's elbow parks itself on his shoulder, and Izuku shifts to let it stay. So what are you doing here? Did you get an invite too? Endeavor did, Todoroki says. But he's been busy, and he hates trotting in front of cameras anyway, so he sent me to represent him. What about you? All Might brought me. Don't ask me why, Izuku says airily. Todoroki gives him a look that's all too knowing. Wait, Melissa cuts in. Endeavor sent you to represent him? As in, the new #1 hero in Japan?
Of course, Abaraka says. His name's Todoroki Shoto. Endeavor's his dad.
She says it so casually, as if standing around, hanging out with the son of the strongest active pro hero, isn't utterly mind-blowing. So anyway, Melissa, Izuku speaks up before she has the chance to gently press Todoroki for details. You've been going to the expo for years, right? How does the first night usually go down? Answering his question turns into regaling them all with stories of incidents from past expos, which turns into her new friends reciprocating with stories from school, and before long, Melissa forgets entirely about asking Todoroki anything. On the other hand, she doesn't forget about what she saw of Izuku's quirk, and what Todoroki told her about it. The cogs in her mind are already at work, putting together several different pieces of support equipment to ease off the quirk strain on his limbs. His current gear alleviates gradual strain, but there's nothing to support stronger bursts of power. It's been a while since the last time she had someone help her around the workshop. Her classmates are always busy with their own projects, and Papa's been working so hard on something lately. The thought of dragging Izuku off to her lab to have him test a few things is extremely tempting. In fact, she might have a few pieces lying around that he might be interested in. It'll have to wait for now, though. He and Todoroki have comfortably attached at the hip, and after her conversation with Uncle Might, she doesn't have the heart to pull him away. Maybe she'll bring it up tomorrow.